U.S. says it has attacked and seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship that tried to get around a naval blockade near the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, President Trump said U.S. negotiators will be in Pakistan on Monday for another round of negotiations with Iran. But Iran says it will not join talks while a blockade remains in place. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung is currently in New Delhi and is set to hold talks with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi later in the day. The two sides are expected to focus on energy supply chains, AI, and defense. North Korea claims that leader Kim Jong-un oversaw the test launch of a surface-to-surface tactical ballistic missile. This comes a day after South Korea's military detected multiple short-range ballistic missiles fired toward the East Sea early Sunday morning. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. With just a couple of days remaining in the ceasefire between the United States and Iran, U.S. forces seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman. But the U.S. claims the talks aren't over, as a delegation will be in Islamabad on Monday night for another round of negotiations. Our Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
Motor vessel Toska, vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire.
That was the sound of the U.S. Navy intercepting the Iranian-flagged cargo ship Tuska in the Gulf of Oman. In a post on Truth Social, U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed on Sunday that U.S. forces had seized the 900-foot vessel after it ignored warnings and attempted to breach the U.S. naval blockade. The incident comes just days before the fragile 2-week ceasefire between Washington and Tehran is set to expire this Wednesday. President Trump also used Truth Social to ramp up the pressure, threatening to destroy Iranian power plants and bridges if Tehran rejects what he called a fair deal. He also said that a U.S. delegation is currently en route to Islamabad, Pakistan, and is expected to arrive on Monday evening to resume negotiations. However, Tehran is refusing to participate. Iranian state media reports there is no clear prospect for talks. Iran insists that as long as the U.S. blockade continues, its delegation will not attend, labeling Washington's demands excessive. The diplomatic deadlock is severely disrupting global supply chains and energy markets. Iran has reversed course and effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz, declaring that any crossing will now be considered cooperation with the enemy. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has fired warning shots at several vessels, forcing ships from France, India, Botswana, and Angola to turn back over the weekend. With the ceasefire deadline looming on Wednesday, the standoff shows no signs of easing. U.S. officials state that all military and diplomatic options remain on the table. However, with Washington demanding an end to maritime attacks and Tehran insisting the naval blockade must be lifted first, there appears little room for a breakthrough before the ceasefire's expiration date. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Iran says it will not join talks with the U.S. and Pakistan while a naval blockade remains in place, despite ongoing indirect exchanges through a mediator. Tehran also condemned the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports and said the Strait of Hormuz is closed again. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Iran says it will not send a negotiating delegation to Pakistan for talks with the United States, insisting discussions cannot move forward while a U.S. naval blockade remains in place. That's according to Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency on Sunday, which added indirect exchanges between Tehran and Washington have continued in recent days through a Pakistani intermediary, following an initial round of negotiations last weekend. The news outlet described the latest contacts as a continuation of that same diplomatic process. However, Iranian officials have made their position clear. As long as U.S. President Donald Trump remains a blockade of Iranian ports, formal negotiations will not take place. On the U.S. side, a White House official says Vice President J.D. Vance, along with envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are expected to travel to Islamabad for talks. President Trump also told Fox News that meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, with the possibility of extending into Wednesday. Iran's foreign ministry condemned the blockade, with spokesperson Ismail Bakai calling the move unlawful and a violation of a Pakistan-mediated ceasefire and a breach of international law, including provisions of the UN Charter. In a statement posted on social media on Sunday, he described the blockade as an act of aggression and accused the United States of imposing collective punishment on the Iranian population. The naval arm of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said Saturday that it's closing the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz, following through on earlier warnings after the U.S. maintained its blockade. 이승재, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung is currently in India. He will sit down with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi today to discuss cooperation on issues such as energy amid the Middle East conflict. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min joins us live from New Delhi. So, Jung-min, what can we expect from the summit?
Benji, we expect the talks to begin soon. A host of issues will be on the table, including energy supply chains, AI, and the defense industry. President Lee and Prime Minister Modi are expected to focus on the Korea-India Special Strategic Partnership. They could also discuss the bilateral trade pact, as negotiations are in the works to upgrade the pact, aiming to expand trade volume to $50 billion by 2030. People-to-people exchanges and cultural cooperation are also high on the agenda. Take a look at what the president had to say.
인도는 단순한 소비 시장이 아니라 이제는 글로벌 생산과 공급망을 이끄는 핵심 국가가 되었습니다. 그리고 앞으로 더욱 성장할 것입니다. 중동 전쟁의 여파 속에서 공급망 불안정과 글로벌 경제 위기가 상시화되고 있기 때문에 한국과 인도는 서로에게 가장 중요한 전략적 파트너가 될 것입니다. 반갑습니다.
President Lee added that he sees a great opportunity for the Korea-India relationship to be upgraded to a new level. South Korean officials see India as a key partner in the global south at a crucial time. In a written interview with local media, President Lee said South Korea is working with India to secure the Strait of Hormuz, as security of maritime routes is essential for survival of the two nations. The summit will begin with a welcoming ceremony, expanded talks, an exchange of MOUs, and a joint press conference. Lee will also lay a wreath at a Mahatma Gandhi memorial in Delhi before the summit. Lee will be hosted by Modi for lunch. Blue House officials expect the visit will not only help strengthen the partnership, but also the personal bond between the two leaders. Last year, they met on the sidelines of the G7 and G20 summits.
Right, and Jung-min, I hear the president will meet with business leaders later in the day, right?
That's right. They will explore ways to seek areas of cooperation that are mutually beneficial. A business delegation is accompanying President Lee on this trip, including Samsung Electronics Chairman Lee Jae-yong and Hyundai Motor Group Chairman Chung Hee-sun. India is a large market with a population of more than 1.4 billion people and is a major global economic power. Later in the evening, President Lee will be hosted by Indian President Draupadi Murmu, the ceremonial head of state, for a state dinner. President Lee arrived in New Delhi yesterday for a 3-day state visit. It's the first time in 8 years that a South Korean president has visited India. Inji.
All right, thank you for that, Jung-min. And President Lee Jae-myung has promised more support for overseas Koreans to ensure a better environment for them. Meeting Koreans residing in India on Sunday, the president appreciated the Korean community for its role in strengthening the South Korea-India bilateral relationship. He noted the hardship and dedication of the first members of India's Korean community after dozens of people fled the peninsula after the Korean War and settled in India in the 1950s. He added that the community shows what the Korean Peninsula has to pursue in the future, namely peace and prosperity, and that people from both South and North Korea live peacefully together. Over the weekend, North Korea test-fired a short-range ballistic missile with a cluster-type warhead. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
North Korea says it has successfully test-launched a short-range surface-to-surface ballistic missile equipped with a cluster-type warhead. According to the North Korean Central News Agency on Monday, the regime carried out the test launch the previous day on April 19th to evaluate the power of the cluster bomb warhead and fragmentation mine warhead mounted on the upgraded tactical ballistic missile Hwasong-11 Ra. The regime leader Kim Jong-un expressed great satisfaction while inspecting the launch at the test site, accompanied by his daughter Jue. North Korea launched 5 Hwasong-11 Ra missiles from the Sinpo area in Hamgyong-namdo province, with photos showing the missile striking a target area near an island about 136 kilometers away, a high-density 12.5 to 13-hectare area, equivalent in size to about 18 soccer fields. Similar cluster bomb warhead tests had been conducted between the 6th and 8th of this month when the regime tested dispersal warheads for the Hwasong-11 Ra, but this marks the first time launch images have made public.
A 136 kilometers range is to pressure the Seoul metropolitan area and the U.S. base in Pyeongtaek. Cluster munitions act like shotgun-style submunitions, spreading from a point over a wide area, targeting bases, airfields, or even deploying lethal mines.
While saying that the development and deployment of various types of cluster bomb warheads would more effectively meet the operational needs of the military, Kim Jong-un emphasized the need to acquire and update to ultra-modern technologies that are necessary for the combat preparedness. Meanwhile, regarding the regime's missile launch, the Joint Chiefs of Staff said they are looking into the missile specifications along with the U.S. and urged the regime to halt the provocations.
The launch clearly violates UN Security Council resolutions. North Korea must immediately halt its repeated provocations and engage in efforts to promote peace on the Korean peninsula.
The National Security Office on Sunday also expressed concerns over North Korea's increasingly frequent ballistic missile launches and urged an immediate halt to such actions. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
On the National Day for the Abolition of Disability Discrimination, we take a closer look at a company redefining employment for people with developmental disabilities by creating a truly inclusive workspace. Our Cho Young-eun files this report.
One employee steps forward to explain how they use an online system to track their daily routines, independently managing their attendance. Soon after, workers move into their respective sectors, receiving clear safety and logistic instructions. Each employee is provided with customized maps featuring photos and simple diagrams. They use their outstanding skills to memorize subway maps to do delivery services by subway. As they pack their assigned cookies and bread into delivery boxes, they head out with a sense of purpose to complete the day's tasks.
When we go out together, the day feels really enjoyable. I'm grateful that this place has allowed me to keep going for 10 years. I'm thankful I've been able to work here for so long.
At this workplace, tasks are carefully redesigned to match individual abilities, allowing employees with developmental disabilities to work efficiently. Tasks such as cutting packaging, assembling boxes, and preparing goods are broken down into clear and manageable steps. Customized tools such as acrylic cutting frames for trimming flowers have been developed based on employee feedback.
I started working here through a recommendation from my school teacher. It's very fun, active, and I really like it. I've been here for about 2 years. I want to keep working hard here for 10 or even 20 years.
In Korea, companies are required to hire a certain portion of people with disabilities. Yet only 30.5% of people with developmental disabilities were employed as of June 2024. At this company, more than 80% of employees have disabilities, and it works with other organizations through Korea's indirect employment support system.
If jobs and environments are well designed to fit people with developmental disabilities, and if they are supported by understanding colleagues, more opportunities can be created, allowing them to grow and achieve results alongside us as members of society.
By transforming employment into one of collaboration and workplace accommodation, this presents a new standard for businesses and a more inclusive society. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In the U.S., a gunman in Shreveport, Louisiana, has shot and killed 8 children. Police say the suspect opened fire across 3 separate residences just after 6 a.m. Sunday in a domestic disturbance. He then carjacked a vehicle and fled before police shot and killed him during the chase. The children killed were aged between 1 and 14 years old, and some of the children were related to the shooter. Shreveport City's mayor called it the worst tragedy the city has ever seen. A Russian-born man opened fire on pedestrians with an automatic rifle in Kyiv on Saturday, killing 6 people and wounding 14. The shooter then barricaded himself in a supermarket with hostages, where police shot him dead after a 40-minute standoff. 8 people remain in hospital on Sunday, including a child whose both parents were killed in the shooting. Footage from the incident showed police officers running away from the shooter, causing the head of Ukraine's patrol police to resign in disgrace. Ukraine's interior minister said that the attacker's mental state was clearly unstable and called for a full investigation. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani and New York Governor Kathy Hochul on Wednesday jointly proposed a new annual surcharge on second homes in the city worth more than $5 million. The measure, targeting roughly 13,000 properties, is expected to generate $500 million a year to help close a projected $5.4 billion budget gap. Mamdani called it a, quote, important step, pointing to properties, including the $238 million Central Park penthouse owned by Citadel founder Ken Griffin, as examples of ultra-luxury real estate sitting largely empty while average New Yorkers struggle with affordability. Pro-Russian former President Rumen Radev scored a landslide victory in Bulgaria's election on Sunday, with exit polls showing his Progressive Bulgaria party taking 44% of the vote. The conservative GERB party took 12.5% of the votes in a result that could reshape the EU members' foreign policy. Radev, a Eurosceptic former fighter pilot who opposes military support for Ukraine, has called for resuming the flow of Russian oil and gas into Europe and has rode a wave of public anger over corruption, political instability, and the rising cost of living since Bulgaria adopted the euro in January. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
The capital saw the record-breaking April warmth yesterday, but today will feel much cooler. This Monday brings Gogu on Korea's seasonal calendar that signals spring rain nourishing the crops. And in line with the term, showers will move through many parts of the country and temperatures will finally ease back to seasonal norms. And about the rain, most parts will see around 5 millimeters of spotty rainfall, but the dust will be mixed into the rainfall. So once the rain moves out, the air quality takes a turn. Yellow dust arriving on northwesterly winds will push pollution levels to bad to very bad nationwide, and tomorrow looks like being even worse. And this afternoon, Seoul and Daejeon will be getting up to 19 degrees, Gwangju at 20 degrees Celsius. So please try to avoid being outdoors tomorrow, as dust levels will be very bad nationwide. Meanwhile, another set of rain is expected for southern regions and Jeju Island on Thursday.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching.